AITA for shutting down my cheating girlfriend after she publicly called me closeted? My name is Brandon. I am 24 years old, and I work at the family restaurant my parents built from scratch in Los Angeles. It is not a famous place, nor does it appear in any food guides, but it is stable, respected in our neighborhood, and above all, it is ours. For me, it is not just a job. It is a responsibility and an investment in the future. Since I finished college, I decided to fully involve myself with the idea of one day growing the business and continuing what my parents started. My life began to change without me realizing it at the time. Everything seemed quite normal. I met Nicole in college. She was 20 and I was 22. We ended up in the same required general education class and started talking almost by chance. Nicole was the complete opposite of me. Extroverted, sociable, and always surrounded by people. I was not shy, but I was quieter, more reserved. Even so, we connected quickly. We started hanging out outside of class, first in groups, and then just the two of us. We went out with friends, went to parties, and made impromptu plans without thinking too much about the next day. For a while, our lives were heading in the same direction. We were not a conflictive couple. We rarely argued, and when it happened, we resolved it quickly. There was no constant drama or exaggerated jealousy. Everything seemed quite balanced. That is why, when we decided to move in together after graduating, it felt like a natural step. The apartment was not big, but it was enough. It had 2 bedrooms, a small living room, and an open kitchen in a typical complex not far from campus. We organized our expenses from the beginning and never had money problems. Nicole worked part-time, and I was already completely focused on the restaurant. It was at that moment when our differences began to become more evident. My routine changed completely. I started working long hours. The restaurant did not close early, and there were days when I had to arrive earlier to receive vendors or stay later to check the accounts. Little by little, I stopped going out. At first, I only missed a few gatherings, then most of them. I preferred to rest, sleep well, and perform well at work. Nicole did not take it well. At first, there were light comments about how I was becoming boring, that I was no longer the same, that I seemed like an older person ahead of my time. I tried to explain to her that it was not a lack of interest in her, but a matter of priorities. I told her the restaurant was a real opportunity for stability, that the effort was worth it. She listened, but she did not seem to truly understand it. Over time, arguments became more frequent. Nicole kept going out with her friends while I stayed home or worked. Often, she would return in the early hours of the morning, and I was already asleep. Other times, the noise of the door or the smell of alcohol would wake me up. I never confronted her about it directly. I thought it was part of her personality, that over time we would find a middle ground. But that balance never came. One night, after a more intense argument than usual, Nicole told me something I could not forget. She said she felt lonely, even when she was with me. I did not know what to answer. From my perspective, I was delivering. I worked, contributed, and was present, but for her, that was not enough. She needed something different, something I was no longer offering. A couple of weeks later, everything changed. That night, I was at the restaurant. Nicole had gone to a party with college friends. She did not invite me, and I did not ask either. Around midnight, I was checking some orders on my phone when a strange notification popped up. It was not from someone I knew directly. For some reason, I opened the story. It was a short video of a party, loud music, lights, people dancing. At first, I did not pay much attention, but then I recognized Nicole's dress. Then her face. She was laughing very close to a guy I had never seen before. I felt an immediate discomfort, but I did not react just yet. I swiped to the next video. There was no doubt anymore. Nicole was kissing him. It was not an ambiguous scene or something that could be interpreted otherwise. It was clear. I felt a strange mix, as if my body reacted before my mind. Cold, heat, a kind of emptiness that is hard to describe. I closed my phone. I stayed motionless for a few seconds, looking around without really seeing anything. Everything remained the same in the restaurant, but not for me anymore. I did not make a scene. I did not call. I did not text. I finished my shift the best I could and returned to the apartment. Nicole had not arrived yet. I sat in the living room to wait. I do not remember how much time passed. When I heard the door open, I was no longer upset. I was calm, but in a strange way, as if something had disconnected. She walked in normally, but stopped when she saw me. I did not raise my voice. I asked her directly who the guy was. At first, she tried to deny it, then downplay it. She said she had drunk too much, that it meant nothing, that it had just been a meaningless kiss. When I mentioned the video, she went quiet. Right there, I understood there was nothing left to discuss. I told her I could not continue the relationship. There was no yelling, just a cold, uncomfortable conversation. I explained that I no longer trusted her, that I could not ignore what had happened. Nicole cried, asked for forgiveness, promised to change, but there was nothing left that I wanted to hear. We lived together, so we agreed on something practical. I would leave the next day. That night, I would sleep in the living room. I got a blanket, took a pillow, and lay down on the couch. I did not sleep. I thought about the 2 years we had been together, about how something that seemed stable had broken so simply. I did not feel anger. I felt disappointment. Around midnight, I heard footsteps. Nicole came out of the bedroom. She was no longer crying. She approached slowly and sat near me. She told me she did not want everything to end like this, that she still desired me, that one night could not erase everything we had lived through. She moved closer and tried to get physically close, speaking softly as if closeness could fix things. She asked me to hold her, to forget everything, even if just for a moment. I stood up immediately. I told her no, that what she had done could not be fixed like that. She insisted, and it was at that moment I understood something important. Not only had she betrayed my trust, but she also did not comprehend the damage she had caused. I grabbed my car keys, my wallet, and headed for the door. I did not want to stay there a minute longer. I left the apartment that very night. The following days passed in a strange way, as if everything was on pause, but at the same time moving forward without asking me. I focused entirely on work. I arrived early at the restaurant and left late. I kept myself busy as much as possible, not because anyone demanded it of me, but because I did not want to think. I checked orders, organized accounts, talked to vendors, helped in the kitchen if needed, anything to keep my mind occupied. I had no energy for uncomfortable conversations or explanations. For me, the relationship was over, period. I did not feel the need to tell everyone what had happened. I was never someone who exposed my personal life, let alone in a situation like this. I thought silence would be enough to close the topic. I was wrong. A few days later, I started noticing something weird on social media. It was not immediate or direct. They were random posts, shared on stories, or her profile. At first, they seemed like ordinary memes, but the tone was different. The first one said something like, "When you thought you had a boyfriend, but you were actually living a different story." I did not give it much importance. I thought it was an immature way of processing the breakup, but then another one appeared. There are things you discover too late, like who the person you were with really was. At that point, it no longer seemed coincidental. She did not mention names, but the message was clear. What made me most uncomfortable was not the posts themselves, but the comments. Several of her friends reacted with exaggerated laughter and suggestive phrases. Comments like, "Girl, you got out of something weird there. Thank goodness you realized. Some things just cannot be fixed." I read that only once. I closed the app. I did not reply. I did not comment. I did not share anything. My instinct was to ignore it completely. I did not want to get into a public argument or stoop to that level. Besides, I was tired. I was working almost 12 hours a day, and the last thing I wanted was to fight over social media. I thought that if I did not react, the issue would die on its own, but it did not. That same week, a mutual friend hosted a get-together for his birthday. He was someone close from college. He did not know Nicole, and I had broken up. In fact, almost no one knew. I had not told anyone. I hesitated to go. I knew Nicole would probably be there, but I also knew I could not start avoiding every place where she might show up. I did not want to live like that, so I decided to go. I arrived a little late, straight from work. I still carried the exhaustion and the smell of the restaurant on my clothes. I greeted some acquaintances, wished the birthday boy a happy birthday, and poured myself a drink. Nicole was already there. At first, everything seemed normal. She was with her group of friends, laughing and talking loudly as always. I stayed on the sidelines, chatting with other people. There was no direct contact between us. We did not even make eye contact for a good while. For a moment, I thought the night would be peaceful, but gradually the atmosphere began to change. First, there were random comments, nothing direct, but clear enough. Nicole was speaking loudly. as if making sure several people heard her. Double-meaning phrases, seemingly general, but clearly directed. It is funny how you can be with someone and not really know them. Sometimes you think you are in a relationship, and it turns out it was not what you thought. Some people laughed without fully understanding, others simply stayed quiet. I was listening, but pretending not to. I kept telling myself it was not worth reacting. I had not gone there to fight. Nicole kept drinking. As the night progressed, her remarks became more direct. Someone casually asked why we were not together that night. She replied with a light laugh, saying that things are not always what they seem. I felt several eyes on me. I just smiled uncomfortably and changed the subject whenever someone tried to involve me. I did not want to explain anything in front of everyone. I did not want to turn a gathering into a conflict. But Nicole seemed increasingly comfortable with the attention. At one point, she raised her voice louder than normal. She was already visibly affected by the alcohol. She was gesturing more, talking faster, and her tone was starting to lose control. She began telling a story. She did not say my name at first, but it was obvious she was talking about me. She described a relationship where, according to her, she gave everything while the other person failed to meet her expectations. The atmosphere grew tense. Some people stopped laughing, others avoided looking directly at her. I felt a knot in my stomach, but I remained silent. I did not want to make a scene at someone else's birthday party. Then, bluntly, she said it. She looked in my direction, smiled strangely, and said out loud that I was gay, that I just had not accepted it. For a few seconds, no one reacted. There were some laughs, but they were uncomfortable, forced, the kind that come out when no one knows how to respond. I stood still with my glass in hand. I felt the attention starting to focus on me. I thought it would end there, that she would notice the silence and stop. But she did not. I mean it, she added, raising her voice a bit more. We broke up because Brandon likes men. The shift in the room was immediate. The laughter vanished. The music kept playing, but it seemed distant. Several people stopped talking. Some looked down. Others stared directly at me, waiting for a reaction. I felt embarrassed, not because of what she was saying, but because of the situation, being exposed like that without having chosen it. I took a deep breath. I did not want to lose control. Stop lying, I finally said with a firm voice. We broke up because you cheated on me. I did not raise my voice. I did not insult her. I just told the truth. Nicole looked at me for a few seconds, as if weighing whether to reply or ignore it. She laughed humorlessly and kept talking as if nothing happened. It was a silly fight, she said. Just a random argument. He went to sleep in the living room, playing the victim. Some people exchanged glances. No one intervened. I went looking for him later, she continued, to fix things like you do in a relationship. The silence grew heavier. I tried to get close to him, you know, in the normal way a couple would try to make up. She paused. And you know what happened? No one answered. He rejected me. I felt the tension in my body. She did not even react, acting as if it were nothing. Some people lowered their eyes. Others remained completely still. If that does not mean something, then I do not know what does. That was when I stepped forward. It was not that, I said. And this time my voice sounded firmer. It was disgust. Upon saying that word, the atmosphere changed completely. A few people let out a low gasp, almost involuntary. A hey was heard somewhere, as if someone was trying to stop what was already inevitable. But I was no longer thinking about that. Yes, disgust. I repeated without raising my voice too much, but without softening it either. Disgust from knowing that the person I shared my life with had been unfaithful to me. Nicole frowned, clearly surprised by my tone. What man would want to be with someone who cheated on him? I continued. What trust is left after that? She opened her mouth to reply, but I did not let her. I did not reject you because of what you were saying, I added. I rejected you because you crossed a line from which there is no coming back. The silence was absolute. Even the music seemed lower, although it was probably the same. Nicole took a step toward me, her face flushed, no longer just from the alcohol, but from the situation. Do not talk to me like that, she said, raising her voice. Respect me. The way she said it shifted the focus of everything. Suddenly, she seemed to want to place herself in the victim role. I am not disrespecting you, I replied. I am stating what happened. You are making me look bad in front of everyone, she retorted. You were the one who started this, I answered without hesitation. Murmurs could be heard. Some people nodded slightly, Others simply watched. You lied. I continued. You cheated on me. And now you try to justify it by making up things about me. Nicole was breathing fast. Her hands were shaking slightly. And what did you want me to do? She said, raising her voice again. Stay and watch how everything became a routine with you. Routine, I repeated. I was working, building something. You became boring, she replied. Everything was work, work, and more work. Because it was necessary, I said. Because I was betting on something real. She shook her head. It was just a kiss, she insisted. You are overreacting. A kiss is enough, I replied. It was not the kiss itself, it was the choice. I paused briefly. It was choosing to betray instead of talking. The argument no longer had filters. Nicole started reproaching me for becoming distant, cold, that I no longer enjoyed life. I pointed out her lack of boundaries, her constant need for validation, and her inability to own up to her mistakes. I noticed something important. Several people were no longer neutral. They said nothing, but their expressions were clear. Some shook their heads when Nicole spoke. Others avoided looking directly at her. That seemed to affect her more than she expected. Right, she said sarcastically. Now everyone believes you. It is not about them believing me, I replied. It is about what happened. There were a few seconds of silence. Nicole looked around. She seemed to realize she had lost control of the situation. Fine, she said finally, throwing her hands up. I get it. She grabbed her purse with abrupt movements, walked toward the exit, but stopped before leaving. She turned toward me one last time. Her expression had changed. She no longer looked angry. She looked hurt, but also proud. You disappoint me, she said. She paused briefly. I never thought it would end like this. She did not yell. She made no other comment. She simply turned around and left. The door closed behind her. The silence left behind was uncomfortable, heavy. No one quite knew what to say. Some avoided looking at me. Others pretended to check their phones. The birthday boy seemed torn between stepping in or letting the moment pass on its own. It was one of my friends who broke the atmosphere, the typical guy in the group who always tries to ease tension. Well, he said with an awkward smile, raising his glass. This birthday is definitely going to be hard to forget. There were a couple of laughs. They were not mocking. They were laughs of relief, as if everyone needed an outlet. The same friend walked up to me and patted my shoulder. Take it easy, he said quietly. She crossed the line. I nodded. I did not feel much like talking. Gradually, people went back to their conversations. The music was turned up a bit. The vibe stopped feeling so tense. It was not that what happened had been erased, but it no longer dominated the night. A few people approached me. Brief comments, without digging deep. No one asked me for explanations, and I honestly appreciated that. I did not need to justify myself. I just needed the situation not to get worse. I walked over to the birthday boy. Hey, sorry about this, I told him. It was not my intention to ruin the night. He laughed immediately. Ruin, he replied. This was the most intense thing that has happened in years. He said it with that exaggerated tone he uses when something is unexpected, but memorable. I smiled for the first time all night, not because the situation was good, but because at least it was over. I stayed a while longer. I talked to some people, normal conversations, work, plans, simple things that helped me regain some sense of control. When I decided to leave, I walked out alone. I walked a few blocks before calling a ride. The fresh air helped. I did not feel good, but I did not feel bad either. It was more of a feeling of exhaustion, like after something that can no longer be changed. The following days were quieter. Nicole kept posting things for a while. Indirect remarks, ambiguous phrases, messages about disappointment and betrayal. Nothing as direct as before. I did not react. I did not reply. I stopped looking. Eventually, I blocked her, not out of anger, but for peace of mind. One day, a friend mentioned he could no longer find her profile. Apparently, she had deleted it or it had been reported multiple times. I felt nothing in particular, neither relief nor satisfaction. I just took it as one more form of closure. Over time, my life returned to a more stable routine. I kept working, but no longer with that constant pressure in my head. I slept better, ate better, thought more clearly. Sometimes I remembered Nicole, but no longer with anger, rather with distance, like something that was part of my life but no longer had a place in it. We live in the same city, so inevitably we ran into each other a few times. The first time was awkward. We saw each other from afar. Our eyes met for just a second. Then we both looked away. No greetings, no gestures, nothing. The following times were easier. It was as if a silent agreement existed. Just ignoring each other, not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. As weeks passed, the story stopped being a topic. No one mentioned it again. No one asked, and that helped close the chapter. I do not consider myself a resentful person, but neither am I someone who forgets quickly. What happened forced me to rethink many things. What do I tolerate? What do I not? What kind of person do I want by my side? I do not regret ending the relationship or defending myself when they tried to make me look bad, because in the end, the hardest part was not the infidelity. It was seeing how someone with whom you shared so much could try to rewrite history to avoid owning up to what they did. Today I move forward, focused on my work, on my goals, on building something that makes sense to me. And Nicole is just someone I shared a phase with, nothing more. Epilogue. Over time, I understood that not all stories end with clear answers or perfect justice. Some simply wear out until they break. Months later, my life no longer revolved around what happened. The restaurant grew little by little. I felt more secure in my decisions, and for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. Sometimes I heard something about Nicole through third parties. Nothing important. Her life went on just like mine, and that was enough, because some relationships are not meant to last, but to teach you exactly what you never want to repeat. Conclusion. I learned that trust is not broken just by an action, but by the choice to hide it, deny it, or justify it. I also understood that respect is more important than any feeling. Without respect, everything else loses value. You cannot control what another person does, but you can control how you react and what you decide to allow in your life. And sometimes leaving in time is not losing. It is the best thing you can do. Comment. Hey everyone, I really hope this story hit home for some of you. One thing that really stood out to me is how crucial it is to protect your own peace and set healthy boundaries. I truly believe self-respect should never be up for negotiation, even when it's difficult. We all deserve to be in relationships where we feel valued and trusted. If someone crosses a major line, it's completely okay to walk away without feeling guilty. Healing begins the moment we stop making excuses for things that hurt us. Taking responsibility for ourselves and expecting the same from others can truly transform our lives. Remember to be kind to yourself while you move forward and build the life you deserve. Real strength often shows up as choosing calm and peace over unnecessary drama. I'd love to know what this story made you think about. Feel free to share your thoughts down below. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.